and welcome to yet another edition of Business Redefined. Now, after a week, or actually I should say 2 weeks of covering intense fiscal matters in the budget, we want now to dial down and talk about micro, small and medium-sized business ventures and how they can access the international markets. Now, the SMELINK Conference is coming to Nairobi later this month, and one of the key issues being explored here will be how to enable the micro, small and medium-sized ventures be able to tap into the opportunities presented into the global markets. But to give us more detail on this, I'm joined by Akindele Akinyemi. Sir, glad to have you. Welcome on set. Just begin by giving us a sense as to what the SMELINK Conference is all about and why it's important that we plug in MSMEs into the global markets.
Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. You know, one of the key things that we have to understand about the SME conference and the SME markets, not just on the continent, but here in the United States, is that we're now moving into a 21st century global economy. That's where we're at, folks. And when you're looking at it from a fourth industrial revolution framework, these SMEs are very key in terms of rebooting communities, linking the wealth between businesses on the continent and here in the United States. You know, as the president and CEO of the Global African Business Association, we've been around for 8 years now, located here in Michigan. One of the key things that we've been educating our people here is about how to do business in Africa and why that's important for communities here in the United States in terms of a tax base and building a new economy.
Great points that you're raising. And let's just talk a little bit about a good number of the MSMEs in this side of the developing world will tell you they experience challenges in terms of accessing value chains to get to the global markets. What sort of advice would you give?
Well, the key thing I always share with folks and my team share with folks is the understanding when you're looking at value chains, supply chains. First of all, you need to identify what type of market you're looking into. So one of the key things when you're looking at agriculture, I'm here in the state of Michigan. I've been here pretty much all my life. Michigan is an agricultural state. We're known for the automotive capital of the world, but also agriculture as well. However, agriculture is not being penetrated in terms of exports on the continent the way it should be. So when you're looking at developing agriculture supply chain, automotive supply chain, ICT supply chain, one of the key things we want to pay attention to is why those supply chains are important. And number two, understanding why those supply chains make a difference as it pertains to economic input, output, and most importantly, creating new jobs for those at hand. And so, I don't want to be long-winded about that. I'll be long-winded at the conference about why those things are important. But these value chains are very essential to the development and advancement of not just the continent, but here in the United States.
Let me ask you, Mr. Akindele, we are having this conversation at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc, particularly among the MSME segment, because they're extremely vulnerable. What's your assessment of the lay of the land, and why is it that you think the international markets could be the way out for MSMEs?
Well, the international markets are the way out for MSMEs because we're living in, we're looking at, when you look at things from business, government, and technology perspective, when you're looking at things from, in the age of blockchain, in the age of technology, in the age of understanding the kind of how can I put it, the type of resources that are necessary. To move things forward from an international perspective. Let me give you an example, if you don't mind, where I'm going with all this. When you're looking at Michigan right now, and I just want to explain this to your audience, the state of Michigan right now, 10 million people, right, sit across from another country which is Canada. We sit on an international waterway. We are sitting here on the Great Lakes. This is a prime opportunity for us to increase imports and exports between the state of Michigan and the East African communities by way of agriculture, by way of technology, by way of the automotive industry. And so one of the key things we have to do is educate the stakeholders why that's necessary in order to move the process forward.
Speaking about educating the stakeholders as to why this is important, one of the challenges that MSMEs normally send our way is that when we try to access the international market, the standards requirement are quite punitive, if I could say. What's your assessment of this, and how would you advise them to go about this?
Well, the most important thing we tell folks here in the United States is if you're going to do any kind of business on the continent of Africa, to please connect with your business associate or your Chamber of Commerce's. The Chamber of Commerce's is normally your first line of defense when you are trying to conduct business anywhere on the continent, whether it's Kenya or Nigeria. And the reason that's important, and that reason why that's important to create those type of relationships is because they understand the most in terms of how to navigate SMEs, how to navigate government, how to navigate the community on the ground there. And so that way you won't get lost in the sauce in terms of setting up your business, in terms of setting up your enterprise to be successful.
Great points raised there. In terms of employment creation, in a market such as Kenya, MSMEs are the workhorse when it comes to employment creation. How significantly do you think accessing international markets can actually cement their position as the key growth drivers?
Well, I think I strongly believe, I always talk about, connecting and linking, again, linking the wealth. That's what we call it here in GABA, in terms of employability. And the reason for that is because we have to understand where we're at in the 21st century. We have folks right now that are resigning from jobs. They're resigning from their positions, and they're looking for new opportunities globally. And so creating these job opportunities by way of small, medium-sized enterprises is essential to connecting the dots and linking that kind of wealth to generate a 21st century economy, if that makes sense. I also just want to point out to your audience, there are also ways for us to do business on the continent by way of industry. What type of industries? I think these things are very important because I think oftentimes folks here want to go home and do business on the continent, but they don't know where to start. I also want to explain to your audience that there are ways of doing business here in the United States. I think the most important thing that we have to understand is create a two-way pipeline with SMEs in order to move that whole process forward.
Mr. Akindele, before we quickly take a break, you began by speaking about the fourth industrial revolution, and as you'd imagine, some of our audience might not be familiar with this. Just give us some context into this and why it's important for MSMEs.
Well, the fourth industrial revolution is the blending of business and technology into one. You had the first industrial revolution with you dealing with trains, locomotives, and things like that. The second revolution was a step up from that. The third revolution was your computer age back in the late 60s and early 70s. And the fourth industrial revolution is everything blended into one with the advent of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity and things of that nature. And so why is that important for SMEs? It's because technology plays a huge role in the 21st century as it pertains to protecting data with cybersecurity, as efficiency with blockchain technology. Now you have cryptocurrencies coming into play. You also have to understand the role of women that play a big role in the fourth industrial revolution as in terms of leadership. and accountability. And so those are some of the very few things. I could talk a lot about that, but these are some of the few things that's going on within the fourth industrial revolution as it pertains to the business.
Maybe just a quick rider to that before we take a break. The issue of women inclusion is very important, especially because they really drive the MSME segment. What particular interventions, maybe from a policy standpoint, would you think would be necessary to facilitate their role in the business environment?
Well, the most important thing we need to really pay attention to is the importance of women in business and government and technology. And I think one of the key steps that we have to remind business owners and SMEs is the fact that women need training, women need skilled tech training, they need skilled trade training, and most importantly, understanding their role in the 21st century. I think we're at an age globally where women have to take the baton and lead and be accountable to the advancement of business development globally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akindele Akinyemi, giving us thoughts. And we are taking a quick break. We shall be right back with a lot more on this conversation now, delving deep into the SMELINK Conference of 2022. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this conversation on the SMELINK Conference of 2022. It's coming to Nairobi, and the whole agenda here is to see how we can facilitate the linkage of micro, small, and medium-sized ventures into the global markets to unlock more opportunity for their growth and scaling. And for that, we are joined by Mr. Akindele Akinyemi once again. Welcome back on set, sir. First of all, just tell us about the conference and why it's important.
This SMELINK Conference 2022 is very crucial to the advancement of not just the continent of Africa, but the African diaspora at large. As you understand, that the African Union has declared the African diaspora as the sixth region. There are 5 regions on the continent of Africa. The sixth region is the African diaspora. This is where I'm at right here in the great state of Michigan. Now, this conference is going to educate the public as to why SMEs are very crucial for the advancement, not just of the continent, but of the diaspora in the 21st century within the framework of business, government, and technology. We want to educate those on how to do business on the continent. We want to educate those on the continent of how to do business here in the United States, in places like the great state of Michigan, where we're based right here, and understanding how local urban communities here in the state of Michigan and other states here in the United States play a big role in the advancement of the continent of Africa by way of business. So I think this conference is going to be extraordinary, it's going to be revolutionary, and it's going to open eyes to a new reality.
I know you might have already touched on this, but let me just prod you a little further. What are some of the thematic issues which, if I'm an SME coming into this, I should be expecting?
Well, one of the key things you should be expecting as with an SME, as a stakeholder with an SME is understanding the importance of education as it pertains to how to do business, where to do business, why this business that you have is essential, and most importantly, linking that business to the global market. Now, the global market is very important, and the reason I'm bringing this up on this broadcast here with you is because, and you and your viewers, because we need to understand that Africa, I want to say this publicly, Africa is first. Africa is first when it comes to business, government, and technology, and reshaping the world in the 21st century. And this conference is going to set the tone on why that's important.
Very great points raised there. One of the oft-cited words of the last 2 years ever since COVID-19 came to our shores has been the issue of resilience. Could you please speak to the resilience of MSMEs and how this can be strengthened?
Well, it could be strengthened. It could be strengthened by understanding the level of resources that are available to those SMEs. Now, COVID-19 did what I consider a paradigm shift and a paradigm shift meaning that it created a disruption of doing things differently. We went from doing traditional commerce to e-commerce. We went from understanding agriculture and the traditional means to utilizing agriculture through e-commerce means. We went from I'm an educator. Education globally went from a traditional model of going into the classroom to either a hybrid model or just increase of online education. So, in terms of resilience, in terms of creating a paradigm shift through COVID-19, now we are entering new markets and new ideas and new innovations that SMEs can tap into that can make their businesses and make their networks grow stronger and more efficient right here in the 21st century.
Mr. Akindele, one of the common challenges faced by SMEs here in Kenya and I believe across developing markets is the issue of access to credit. And they will tell you that because of the demands of collateralization, they have a challenge accessing that. What's your assessment and how do you think this is evolving?
Part of the, access to credit is one thing. I think part of the solution to access to credit, at least through our networks, what we've been working on is through blockchain and blockchain technology, and also understanding access to credit. I just, strongly encourage, and I've talked about.
Sorry, we lost you there for a while.
Okay, I can repeat myself. Sorry.
Please.
What I was saying about access to credit, blockchain technology is one thing to assist in access to credit in terms of solutions. The other thing, we need to be working with access to credit, especially access to credit to those who are in rural areas, is just really strengthening our financial markets and our financial institutions and helping them understand the importance of what that looks like in terms of access to credit. Now, I am big on, I'm very big on SMEs developing credit institutions and credit programs, microcredit programs that have access to those in need. And so I think one of the key things that SMEs can play a big role in, not just in Kenya, believe it or not, here in the United States, we have an access to credit problem here in the United States. People don't realize that just because the United States is the largest economy on the planet doesn't mean that folks don't have access to credit. A lot of people don't have access to credit, but that's where these specialized programs that we can develop as SMEs that can address those issues.
I like that. Let's go back to a point you touched on about the role of the diaspora as far as accelerating growth and development in the African continent is concerned. Could you give us more insight to that? Because one of the strange things we observed even during COVID-19 is that diaspora remittances into the continent remained extremely robust.
Well, it remains robust. However, I strongly predict that it's going to even increase with the advent of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and these other coins that are available. The digitalization of the economy. I think those things are essential when you're looking at things like remittance. But also, we need to understand that even with that's going to transform itself. That economy itself is going to transform itself, and also the increased participation of African Americans right here in the United States that want to do business in Africa, in places like Ghana and Nigeria and Rwanda and Kenya through ICT. I think all those things creates a bigger synergy for the future of our continent as one. And so I think the diaspora play a big role in investing. I think we have a big role to conduct business on the continent. It's not just China and Russia and France and all these other countries that don't look like us. I think we have a big stake to play.
I like that, and you preempted me to my next question, because ever since mid last year, we had the Africa Continental Free Trade Area being rolled out. And the question that often emerges is that what is the role of synergies across borders in the African continent as far as driving the SME growth agenda is concerned? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, the African Continental Free Trade Area is revolutionary and evolutionary within itself as it continues to be scaled up to par. I think one of the key things that we have to be just mindful of is that our respective governments need to play a big role in stabilizing their economy and just stabilizing their government in general, and also including women. I'm gonna keep bringing that part up about women being included into the whole equation. And also, you know, how does, you know, I get this question a lot. How do people in the diaspora play a role in the African Continental Free Trade Area? Well, you know, I always tell folks this, you know, GABA, the Global African Business Association, is located in Romulus, Michigan. And the reality in Romulus, Michigan is a logistics city right outside Detroit. Now, let's just take this for example, and I'll explain this to your audience. Let's say, for instance, we have a person that owns and operates a logistics business in Romulus, and they operate a logistics business in Kenya. And they're doing trading. They're doing trading and business between Romulus and Kenya. And from Kenya, they're doing business in Rwanda. From Rwanda, they're doing business in Uganda. Well, you could possibly participate in. You could possibly participate or participate in the African Continental Free Trade Area. You're already a stakeholder from that angle, and I think we want to continue to educate people that just even though the free trade area itself is on the continent, you also have other entities that are involved, the African, including the African Growth Opportunity Act, AGOA, and tying all of this into one synergy so that we can build wealth in our respective regions and communities.
Getting to the tail end of our conversation, you've spoken about governments, and a viewer watching might be wondering, when I come to the conference, is there participation from the policy agencies, governments? What sense of flavor can you give us?
Well, you know, when you're dealing with governments, and I'm gonna just say this to your audience, I deal with governments from a 21st century perspective. When you're looking at government, we need good governance and good public policies that make sense, that's going to impact our people in a 21st century framework. Period. You know, we have to get rid of old governance and old models that don't simply work in the framework of technology and the framework of business. And so when you come to this conference and you understanding the importance of what government brings to the table, government should be a player and be a partner to SMEs to make them successful. Government should be in the business of creating the positive environments that it's easy to set up a business, whether you live in Kenya or whether you live here in Michigan or Nebraska. We should be government should be a partner, not a hindrance to the advancement of SMEs.
Mr. Akindele, we have only a minute to go. Let me give you an opportunity to give your parting shot to invite participation to the conference.
Hey, you know, first of all, thank you for having me on this evening. Please join the SMELINK Conference 2022. It's going to be explosive. You're talking about a conference that's going to be mind-blowing. You're talking about a conference that's going to be educational. You're talking about a conference that's going to really move the needle up for SMEs and really link the wealth of SMEs, not just there on the continent of Africa, but here in the United States, so that we can create our own ecosystem. That's what it's about. That's why Africa has to be first. That's why we have to take the role of leadership and accountability, integrity, and trust so that we can move this process forward. Look forward to seeing everybody.
Mr. Akindele Akinyemi, thank you so much for your time, giving us insight into what to expect as far as the SMELINK Conference, which kicks off on the 20th of this month right here in Nairobi. So if you're an SME, you want to definitely take note of that and ensure that you participate to be able to get insights into how you can unlock access to the global markets. That has been our conversation on Business Redefined tonight. We shall continue highlighting issues regarding the scaling of micro, small, and medium-sized ventures.